Balancing an ensemble is one of the hardest aspects of it because the time frame that you work within is so limited. You have to be strategic about it. You have to have a plan. You have to have priorities of what your projects are going to be, because if you're trying to come through the whole show, you're maybe going to get to hear everything once, maybe twice at best. And even then, if we're running chunks of the show and we're going through things in an ensemble format, it's not based around what I need from a mix perspective. It's based around the ensemble needs of the core. So maybe we'll go through like 6 or 7 different scenes where we need to make adjustments in one rehearsal rep. There's a lot of things to sort out. There's a lot of like elements, and honestly, in every rehearsal site, there's a lot of variables, just the way it sounds in that venue, the overall levels that we may be running to fit that venue, the angling of the speakers, the acoustics of the venue itself. So, it's like having a consistent approach is the one thing you can rely on. Being picky about where I'm sitting, making sure all my devices are set up, making sure that everything's sound checked, ready to go, making sure that we have a list of kind of trouble spots and areas that we're focusing on, just helps us be organized in that ensemble rehearsal, because it's such a critical time. And I feel like the balance of the ensemble is one of the hardest things to get right, because every single person on our staff is going to have a different opinion on it, representing the needs of the brass staff and their opinions on things, percussion and how they're integrated into the overall mix and what elements might be masking some of those elements. And then on the other side, just the sound design between Dave Glide, Fred Smith, and myself, and all of our contributions, and making sure that everything is copacetic to what our original vision was when we created those elements.
It's a lot like making a soup. I call it sound soup, right? So when you season the sound soup, maybe you do a lot of the seasoning at the beginning. Maybe in the beginning, you're spending a lot of time in rehearsal just balancing and getting things right. And then as you go, you taste the soup and you make adjustments from there. So what that means, bake it into your rehearsal. When you make your rehearsal schedule and you pick out your show chunks, put in a rep that is just for balance. I think the best ensembles do that. If you're doing a given chunk for 4 reps, the first rep, don't say anything, especially if you have a team. Give them a rep to make adjustments already. The second rep, if you've heard something that maybe you want to go in a certain direction, that's when you say something. The third rep should be either, yes, we nailed it, or we need to split the difference on the adjustment we made. And then by that 4th rep, you're either putting one in the bank or solidifying it the way you want it, and you can choose to maybe do another rep or go on. But the point is, it's baked into every rehearsal that way. And then it's not this big intrusive thing, right? It's like cleaning the kitchen after you made your soup. If you do it as you go, you don't have to do it all at the end.
The clarity and the intent of the moment is like paramount. We come out of the wind band culture. I think we're clearly going in a different direction, like where a lot of things are cinematic on a lot of levels. I think you got to have the full range. I think there should be moments in the show that almost sound acoustic. Whether it's not acoustic, whether it might be reinforced and amplified or supplemented with electronics, it should sound acoustic. Like it should sound natural. But then being able to pair those moments with, heavily integrated electronics, that's where the sweet spot's at. Where you can take your electronics and put it in and add something, that you can't do with a wind ensemble. I think that's for me, the creative goal when it comes to balancing an ensemble. And every moment's going to be completely different. I don't think from a balance standpoint, there are any set in stone rules. It's creative. It comes up to personal taste. I listen to band directors and musicians who I really, really respect, and they listen to a moment that I think sounds perfect. And they're like, well, what about this and what about that? And you got to go with what you trust and what you believe. If you constantly hear the same feedback on a moment, that what about this is that too loud, and you think it's perfect, and you get that feedback consistently from everyone, where there's smoke there's fire. That you might want to look at that and go like, maybe I do need to change my creative take on it.
Like there's always a priority and a hierarchy of what we want to hear first. You want to hear the melody? Okay, then let's make sure the melody is the most important thing. And then the next part, do we want to prioritize the harmony? Do we want to prioritize the texture? Do we want to prioritize something else rhythmically? Those are the choices we have to make as instructors and directors, and then go from that aspect in terms of how we want to balance the ensemble. My position at Carolina Crown, on paper might just say audio caption supervisor, but also I've been given the major responsibility of balancing the ensemble. And so to be able to balance the brass to the percussion, not just marimbas and vibes, but then also tonal instruments like our kick drums or snare drums, timpani, and then the electronic element. And within that, we have our high, mid, and low voices with the electronic element. And so like knowing what those priorities are, like what we want to hear first, and then how can we get everything else to support that, is kind of the process of how we balance. And that's something that's an ongoing process. Again, as the ensemble gets cleaner, gets clearer, things are more in tune, then we can shift some of those things in terms of how we layer those voices and textures within the ensemble. So it just comes down to a choice of what we want to hear. And sometimes we, as the ones making the decisions as designers, we want to say this is the most important voice. And then sometimes we go to competition, then the people adjudicate us go, well, to me, that's not the most important voice. So then you kind of get stuck in a situation where you go, well, this is the choice we're going to make. And that's totally fine. If you're going to make that the choice, and make it a clear choice of wherever that's going to be.
Early in the season, before we ever hit the field in an ensemble rehearsal, we're kind of planning out our scene list. We're kind of mapping out just the mix of the show and where our priorities are. A lot of the time at the Blue Devils, there's tons of layering going on. So there might be like a primary element, but there might be a secondary, a tertiary, and sometimes even a fourth element kind of competing with each other for those priorities. So something good to do is just go through the score, talk about it as a music ensemble staff, and just kind of assess like what are the most important priorities. And then we kind of build around that. It's like, are those priorities in the forefront? And then the other question we're always asking ourselves is everything else that we're presenting audible and present in the mix as well.
You've got the sound pyramid, with the tubas on bottom, working your way up all the way. And anything that's coming out of the speakers fits in that same pyramid. And if there's not that clear communication, the paired person goes, oh, this is a good part for like a little marimba exposure. And the electronics goes, oh, this is a great part, for this. And the drumline person was like, and so now you have three people who think that a certain element should be on top of the mix. Well, how do you mix that? Sometimes it's not fixed with faders, it's fixed with the eraser. As a designer, as a team, you kind of just have to decide, are we okay with that? Is that the purpose? Or can we maybe rewrite one, make it less important, or just take that part out so it's more clear? Do we need all of these things? Sometimes there's no right answer to balance two parts because they're both serving the same function.
That's all under the category of clarity of intent, right? And so a lot of times it comes down to orchestration, comes down to staging, and then it's going to come down to mixing and also giving your students an understanding of what their role is in the ensemble.
And a lot of times it's taking your secondary and your tertiary ideas and lowering those ideas so the primary line can come through. I think when people mix and they balance ensembles, everything's to the moon. Well, I can't hear my primary line enough, make it louder. And then we just keep on, you go in this cycle and it gets to the end and everything is kind of like overwhelming. So, being able to subtractively mix and take things away that aren't as important, I think is so unbelievably clear. Artistic integrity is a lonely hill to die on. If you're the only one that thinks something's beautiful and the moment just doesn't work, it's going to be really lonely at the top, So you got to be flexible when it comes to balance. Yeah. Sometimes it's, it doesn't pay to be right.